name's Shahar Azani, and in the news, a new Israeli government was sworn in Israel, headed by Yamina Party's head and former Netanyahu chief of staff, Naftali Bennett. History in the making, or just another political day in Israel? I'm happy to have with me all the way from Israel, Ambassador Dani Ayalon. Dani Ayalon is an Israeli diplomat, columnist, and politician. He was Israel's ambassador to the United States of America, deputy foreign minister of Israel, as well as senior foreign policy advisor to Prime Ministers Ariel Sharon, Ehud Barak, and Benjamin Netanyahu. Ambassador, such a pleasure to have you with us all the way from Israel.
My pleasure, Shahar, always good to be with you.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you think about what happened in Israel and new government. Is it a historic day or just another day in the wheeling and dealing of Israeli politics?
Well, I think, if we put some cynicism aside, I think it is an historic day, not only because for the first time after 12 years, we will have a new prime minister, but also I would say the composition of the government is such that it really puts together such an amalgam of parties, the entire spectrum of the political landscape from the far right to the far left. So this is a novelty, and this could be a breath of fresh air in terms of calming down the situation and certainly the polarity in Israel. Also, for the first time, we have an Arab-Israeli party, which, we are always very concerned, and Shahar, you have been there at the trenches, fighting for Israel's image, and BDS. And having such a party, an Arab party in the government for the first time, I think it's going to be very helpful for Israel's image. I think it's going to help fighting BDS and all those meshugas, as we say here. And the question, of course, is whether they will be able to operate together. And here, this will depend on the maturity, I would say, and wisdom of the heads of the parties. What keeps them together right now are two things. First and foremost is, I would say, hatred to Bibi Netanyahu, or not hatred, maybe it's too strong of a word, but disagreement with the way the country was governed and its direction under Netanyahu. And this came to a boil just in the last few elections. We saw that. We had election after election. So if they would, so first of all, this hatred against Netanyahu. And the second thing is that if this government falls apart, many of them will not stand a chance to be re-elected. So this should keep them together. And if they will be wise not to get into the most, let's say, controversial areas, especially when it comes to the Palestinian issues, or state and religion, when it comes to relations with the religious, I would say, administration here and the Rabbanut here, and then I think they have a good chance to continue.
Dani, your perspective is unique because you're both a diplomat and a politician and a columnist. You're familiar with all of the different arenas. So I think nobody better could maybe describe to our viewers in a few words, who is Naftali Bennett, the former chief of staff of Netanyahu, former aide to the prime minister, who is now replacing the prime minister. What do you have to share about Naftali?
Okay, well, first of all, Naftali Bennett is a decorated soldier. He served in the elite units in Israel and distinguished himself in the Lebanon War, especially the Second Lebanon War. He was a protege of none else than Bibi Netanyahu. He was his chief of staff. He was later the director general of the Yesha Council. That means he was the highest, I would say, ranking official of the settlers movement. And from there, he used this as a springboard to politics. But he was also a very gifted businessman, high tech. He made a huge exit many years ago, and that allowed him really the comfort to really dedicate himself for public life. And this is what he has been doing since that exit that he made. and he went his own way after a few years that he served in the, I would say, the traditional national religious party, the Mafdal, which is no more. But he was a maverick there. He didn't get along with the fact that he had to bow to the rabbis of the Mafdal, of that party, and he created his own party. And he just stayed the course. We've had just now 4 successive elections in a short period, in less than 2 years or two plus years. And he kept the course, even though on one of these elections he did not get reelected, didn't pass the threshold as we have here, but he kept on going. So he showed the stamina, he showed determination. I think he's very talented. I've met him a few times, and I think that he's also somebody that you can trust. He's also a patriot, a real good Israeli patriot, a very, I would say, somebody who's concerned about the Jewish people. So I think we should give him a chance. We should give him a chance. Nobody is born prime minister. Nobody is born a Churchill or a Netanyahu. They have to grow in the office. And I think if we have, if he has a chance to grow in the office, we may be pleasantly surprised.
Danny, I'm thinking that only in Israeli politics can you go from not passing the electoral threshold 2 years ago to becoming Israel's prime minister. It's truly amazing. A land of opportunities.
Right. It's so much different than the American. Here politicians never retire. That's the whole thing. They can get recycled and recycled. That's a real big difference than we have in your neck of the woods.
And the truth also is that this government has some, new, fresh actors, players who become suddenly holders of power rather than the eternal opposition party benchers. But I want to ask you something. You mentioned the word trust and relationship and the animosity, the political animosity towards Netanyahu. It was revealed that the former prime minister Netanyahu, we still have to get used to that, offered Benny Gantz, the minister of defense in his government and in this new government, the option of resigning immediately as prime minister and giving the premiership to Benny Gantz. And he said no. What happened?
Well, he was stung once. According to the agreement that he had with Netanyahu, an agreement which was corroborated in law that the Knesset passed, they were supposed to run the government together, and he was going to replace him just 3 months from now, November 2021. And Netanyahu, from the get-go, from day one, did everything to sabotage this agreement to the extent of having this 5th election. So there's no trust there. And because it was stung once, and he paid dearly. Benny Gantz paid dearly in the public arena for actually breaking a vow, a campaign promise. And he did go with Netanyahu, and he did it only to help the country and stabilize the political system. And unfortunately, that did not pan out. And of course, he blames Netanyahu for that. And I think it was quite unbecoming. And it's the Netanyahu's desperate attempts in the last few weeks to offer so many people to come and to do a rotation with him and to join the government and support him, to no avail. That was not a very pleasant scene. And I think at this point, we should respect Netanyahu. We should thank him for his great service for the country. And we certainly should not be in a position to continue and bicker about him. And I see there's some quarters here, especially in the far left, that are just are so happy and are so gloating about it. And this is also should not be the case. I hope that this government, and as you mentioned, Naftali Bennett, he calls this government not just national unity, but also a healing government after all this polarization. So healing also starts with really respecting the former Prime Minister Netanyahu. And actually, Bennett had quite a differential speech yesterday in the Knesset, really giving the all the honor to Netanyahu.
You know, his speech indeed was reconciliatory, especially compared to all of the others. But you're mentioning the term of a national unity government and healing, but you have a big chunk of the Israeli public, the ultra-Orthodox, and the 30 seats of Likud, a major power within the Israeli public. They're not part of this government. So is it really a national unity government? And does the glue of the animosity towards the former prime minister is enough to hold it together?
Well, I think this is one thing. A lot depends if Netanyahu will continue to hold power in the Likud, because right now, after he was not able to win the election for Likud for the last 2.5 years in 4 successive elections, with all the ties, there are some, let's say, rumors, and there's some discomfort, and there are those second-tier Likud politicians who are waiting in the wings, and this, I think, will compel Netanyahu to be as aggressive politically as possible. And we have already seen it. You know, his speech last night was not conciliatory, and he's attacking the government already, which is fine. This is the job of the opposition. But I would say that for the last few years, when we had this government, mainly of Likud and the religious party, I'm not sure that this presented a majority of the government. Right now, they have 52 seats in the Knesset out of the 120. However, what is the claim that Likud has and Bibi Netanyahu has is that those who voted in the last election for, let's say, Gideon Sa'ar, his party, and Bennett, and even Lieberman, these are supposedly right-wing parties. And Netanyahu claims that their voters expected them to support Bibi Netanyahu as prime minister. And this is what, I guess, makes the argument so acrimonious, where Likud, of course, is accusing Bennett and Sa'ar of stealing, quote unquote, the votes that they got from the voters and giving it to the other side. But, we can go on and dissect and argue forever. I think that there is a reality here that all of us have to face. As they say, politics is the art of the possible. I think it's very, very important that as much as possible, we all get behind the new government and help it succeed, because its success is our success. It's the country's success. It's the Jewish people's success.
Very, very true, Danny. And now I would like to address your extensive diplomatic experience. We're talking about a democratic president here in the United States, a democratic establishment, and then you have as you said, a former Yesha Council head and religious Zionist, kippah wearing, for the first time, yarmulke wearing prime minister in Israel. How is that going to work?
Well, of course, that depends how these two gentlemen hit it off together, both the prime minister and the president. Of course, the solid rock, I would say, alliance. This is a natural alliance between Israel and the United States for many reasons, and you know it, Shahar. I'm sure your viewers also understand it. In a different program, we can really go down into it. There's a lot to say about it. But this relationship is very important for both our countries, and this will continue. Maybe there will be some nuances, maybe less intimacy or more intimacy. Depends a lot on this, I would say, ephemeral, elusive term in diplomatic jargon, which is the chemistry between them. I would say that so far we have seen that President Biden has really extended his hand, and 2 hours he was sworn in. Biden called to congratulate Bennett. I'm sure pretty soon there will be an invitation to the White House. And when the two leaders sit together, on a tete-a-tete, on just one-on-one, and they can really understand each other, both in terms of their visions, but also their constraints, especially political constraints, and try to hammer out some kind of a plan for the next 3.5 years, I think that could work. The most important thing is trust and mutual respect, and here, and no surprises. And if there will be no surprises, if everything will be done in good consultation, even when we agree not to agree. No, there have been many times that we didn't agree on everything, the two administrations in Jerusalem and Washington, but even then, always the golden rule was we agree to disagree, but never did this disagreement, which usually was not on the bilateral issues, because on the bilateral everything is great, you know, from technology sharing to defense cooperation to economic and anything else, cyber, you name it. But always the fly in the ointment, if I may say so, was when it came to third parties, namely the Palestinians, now also Iran. So if they will be able to isolate these two issues and come to terms about how to proceed on these two issues, and even agree to disagree without this disagreement having, you know, spilling over to the bilateral, I think there's a good chance. And I believe there was a sigh of relief, because Bibi Netanyahu was very tough. And although with personal friendship with Biden, I think that Biden and his administration were quite apprehensive about Bibi's ability to really work against what they see as a strategic important goal of going back to the JCPOA with Iran, you know, the nuclear deal. Bennett does not have any different view. By the way, it's a consensus in Israel that Iran should never have a nuclear weapons, and also that the agreement of 2015 was a bad one. So there will be a lot to discuss. And of course, the Palestinian issue, I don't see this as a bone of, let's say, of dissent or conflict, because nobody thinks that there is a partner on the other side. And Biden, knowing and with his experience, especially after 8 years as vice president to Obama, who tried his best to move forward, but to no avail because of Palestinian intransigence, I don't think that Biden would have any appetite, and he will not to deal with the Palestinian issue, and not even to spend prestige, political capital, diplomatic capital. So they will go into a mode of what we say the conflict management, not conflict resolution. So this in itself will take away a major stumbling stone that could have, hampered the relationship between the personal ones between the former head of the Yesha Council of the settlers and the prime minister and the president, of course.
The president. Yeah, do you expect, Danny, to see a change? I mean, Naftali Bennett was Minister of Defense under Netanyahu, which we remember how he mocked him, but appointed him. And still, do you expect a change in the situation vis-a-vis Hamas in Gaza under Naftali Bennett as premier, as what we used to see under Netanyahu in the past 12 years?
I'm not sure. That the strategic approach to Gaza has been well thought of, and it's not just a matter of any capricious thinking of the prime minister or the government. There is a very, very thoughtful process of decision making, going all the way with the intelligence branches, with the military, with other, even with economic and other ministries as well, of course, the foreign ministry. And I don't think that Bennett will have any new policy about Gaza. There is one danger, though, right now, in this very sensitive time of the overlap or just the first few days or weeks of the new government, that Hamas may want to test the new government. And here, if this happens, Bennett will have to respond in a very decisive way. So in that respect, if there is any provocation from Gaza in the next, in the near future, then Israel will have to respond in a very, very harsh way, even harsher than what used to be during Netanyahu's time.
You know, you were mentioning this, and as we speak, we hear statements coming from Hamas's direction that they're going to renew the efforts to launch incendiary balloons into Israel and torch fields. So Israel being Israel, like you say, the challenge will present itself rather quickly. Last question, Danny. I know your time is is full. You are also, beyond everything else, a champion of Israel's public image. The battle for public image, you've produced many short videos about this. You're a prominent voice on social media and beyond. What would you recommend our viewers who want to convey the truth about Israel and share Israel's image at the moment and convey what's happening in Israel? What do you want them, what's the message you want to give them to take on to their families, businesses, on audiences online and beyond about Israel?
Well, I would say the first one is that Israel is a peace-seeking country, and we have the proof. You know, we made peace with Egypt with great concessions. We gave them the entire Sinai. The same thing was with the Jordan. The problem with the Palestinian is the only reason there is no peace with the Palestinians, and everybody knows we have been really willing to bend over backwards for them. But the only reason that there was no peace with the Palestinians is that they do not recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, which is our DNA, which is our right for self-determination. So if they will just get the details, and thank you for mentioning, you know, I've had this non-profit, The Truth About Israel, and we have all this information encapsulated in very succinct way, you know, 2-3 minute videos. If your viewers go into the Truth About Israel website and see this clips, there are quite a few of them on every subject between us and the Palestinians, and send it and share it to as many people as possible. This is a way to hopefully move the needle a little bit in our directions, as we really face an avalanche of anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-Israeli slurs and propaganda, unfortunately directed by the Palestinians and their collaborators.
Danny, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that I visited various schools in the area pre-COVID and even post-COVID, and I've seen your videos of the Truth About Israel starring in different interactions when the situation in Israel and the Middle East needed a clear, cut, short, and concise explanation because it's a quagmirical issue, and they always turn to you. So thank you again for this and for your time with us today.
Absolutely. You know that we have been accused on this really outrageous accusation that we are, quote unquote, an apartheid state, you know, far from it. And maybe now, when they see all the Arab members of Knesset and an Arab minister now in the government and an Arab party as part of the coalition, maybe people will understand who we are and what we stand for.
Especially the visual, Danny, to have an Islamic movement member as part of the coalition and the ultra-Orthodox as part of the opposition. And that would really confuse Israel's hater, wouldn't it?
Right. That's right.
Thank you very much. And thank you all to all of our viewers for joining us on JBS. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, our technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to our wonderful producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Shalom and leitao.